Hello, everybody. It's the Historical Gamer. You can call me Matt, and I am back with my co-hosts here on the Single Malt Strategy podcast. It's been a while since we've all been together. We're up to episode 46 of this illustrious strategy gaming podcast, and I'm excited to welcome back all of my co-hosts today. We've got Tortuga, we've got Jean, the Strategy Wargamer, and we're all back here to talk about what we've been doing over the last couple of months, because again, it has been a bit since the last time we talked about what we've been playing.
Yes, it has, and I know there's been a lot that has been coming out, and there's been a shit ton of games that also came out, so I'm kind of curious to see what you guys have been playing. Tortuga, you go first.
3 words.
It's morphin time.
Oh no, this is good. I don't think Matt has heard of this one yet, but Ultimate Admiral Dreadnoughts.
Yeah, I don't think Matt has heard of that. I think that's something that passed by his radar.
Is this a rumor? Is this vaporware?
Yeah, I mean, when he was on vacation, it literally sailed right by him, steamed right by him. Damn it! I could have made that so much better.
Yeah, not Age of Sail. That one's been out for a little while.
There's so many fucking naval games from Game Labs. I get lost sometimes. There's Age of Sail, There's Dreadnoughts, and then there's another one, I think.
There's Naval Action, which is what you confused with Age of Sail. Then there's Age of Sail, and then there's Dreadnoughts. Naval Action is the one no one wants to talk about, because that's the one that has a bit of a muddy past.
There's people talking about it, just not in a particularly positive way.
But yeah, a lot of positive things to say about Ultimate Admiral Dreadnought, which isn't officially out yet, right? It just entered, early Alpha 1 access.
Yeah.
Basically, if you pre-order and you pay double the pre-order price, which is still a reasonable $50, I think it is, you can get access to the Alpha build of Ultimate Admiral Dreadnoughts, which, I think, Tortuga, you're probably the best position to talk about this a little bit.
It's $50?
I don't... So, yeah, I think it's what Matt said. It's $25 for early access. But if you want to play... No, sorry, it's $25 to pre-order, but $50 if you want early access, or maybe the pre-order will translate to beta testing. I don't know. But then I guess the game's supposed to be $50 when it's released, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm assuming they're just basically saying, hey, listen, we'll give you a discount if you give us money right away. And then they're saying, but if you pay what the full price will be, you can play this thing presumably 4, 5, 6 months early. I don't know. They're probably still a ways away from a commercial release of the final product.
It's amazing because, I don't know if it's because I kind of think that it's with all these games being more or less similar, with the naval theme. I feel like they probably parlayed Naval Action into Ultimate Admiral Age of Sails, and they probably took a lot of the work they had done on both those previous to put them into Dreadnoughts. I don't know. I mean, I'm just speculating, but it would make sense for them to do that. So the funny thing is, when Alpha 1 came out, it's extremely polished.
Oh shit, really?
The ship combat. It's just the campaign, the actual, structure. The playground is there, but the context is completely missing right now.
Okay.
Yeah, so, and just so sort of an overview for those of you who may be unfamiliar with Ultimate Admiral Dreadnoughts, it is a game that allows you to design warships in sort of the late it basically covers all the way from the beginning of the pre-Dreadnought period, which is around the early 1890s, all the way through to 1920s, 1930s, so just before World War II. That's the era they're intending to cover with the game. It is, I guess the easiest description would almost be like Rule the Waves, but with graphics. That's usually what I see people say.
Yeah, there's two other games which people reference, which I actually keep talking and I'm going to look them up.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, it's basically like Rule the Waves with graphics to a certain degree. I wouldn't say they replace each other because Ultimate Admiral Dreadnoughts, I think, at least in terms of some of the things like the damage modeling, it's a little bit more bare bones than something like Rule the Waves. But it essentially allows you to build navies, design ships, and when the campaign's ready, it'll have something very similar to Rule the Waves, where you're basically the head of a navy of a great power in the period that we discussed. And you're charged with building and designing your fleet, progressing through technological advancements, and when wars come up, fighting wars. And we don't know much beyond that because the campaign's not in the game yet. So, it's hard to say exactly what that will look like. But the basic concept is the same as Rule the Waves, where you're the head of a navy, you're in charge of designing ships, and then you have to fight those ships when wars do occur. What's in the game right now is, I think it's 21 different scenarios.
Oh, wow.
In what they call the Naval Academy, which kind of doubles between like standalone challenge missions and a little bit of a tutorial. So it basically walks you through the mechanics of building and designing ships, and then there's a whole bunch of different scenarios that you can see, like why different types of designs or different types of technologies are sound or will help you out in different scenarios. So I think it's a pretty interesting game so far. I'm really excited about it, to be frank. And I think, as Tortuga said, for an alpha state for the game, it is incredibly well polished. And the thing that I think is the most impressive for me is the ship designer. It's almost like a more user-friendly Kerbal Space Program Manager in a kind of a way, where like you've got this 3D image of a hull, basically, and then you just drag and drop like through this really easy point-and-click mechanic. Like, do I want a turret here? Do I want a turret there? Where do I want to put the towers? Where do I want to put the funnels for the ship? If you could make a better ship designer GUI and user interface, I might call you a liar, because it is brilliantly done. I do have some reservations with some of the combat mechanics. I do feel like, especially with the damage model, it can become a little bit like shooting a burnt-out Hulk. And ships, I think sometimes some ships are too difficult to sink. I believe the way it works right now is there's all these different compartments in a ship, and when you hit the compartment, you can destroy it and you can damage it, or you can start fires, or you can start flooding. But once a compartment is damaged, I'm pretty sure you can't damage it again, which means, like, until in some scenarios it feels like there's like 1 or 2 compartments left in the ship, and you're just pounding it mercilessly, and it still won't sink. I also do think that they could probably do a little bit better job of managing return fire. Fire does get less accurate from ships as they're damaged, but it's kind of laughable to see a ship that has every compartment destroyed except for 1 or 2, and it's still returning fire with its main guns. Yes, there are historical examples that people will cite like that, with like the Bismarck, but not every ship was the Bismarck, and right now it kind of feels a little bit like it. But again, it's in early alpha stage, so my hope is that as this game moves forward through development, they tweak and they polish those things and they refine those things, and that by the time the game is fully ready to launch, it irons out those. Because for a game to be this early in development, and for my critiques to be that pointed, is pretty damn impressive.
So I'm kind of curious. So World War I combat has been like World War I to World War II combat. If you fire a shell, you'd be lucky if you hit in the same realm of the actual other ship. How is, when you're firing another ship, how accurate is it? Is it like kind of like, shoot and kind of, cross your fingers?
I mean, there's differing levels of technology. So your hit rates in the early 1890s are going to be dramatically different than the 1930s. By the late design ships, and I think some of the technology in the game probably progresses beyond the 30s and into the 40s, because they do have radar fire control by the late battleship designs.
Yeah, it goes to the 40s.
So if you're looking at like a radar, if you have a ship that has radar that you're shooting at an enemy ship, it's going to hit pretty well. Maybe not 100% of the time, but if you fire a salvo of 9 rounds, you're probably striking home with at least 1. So it seems about right. I mean, maybe the ships are a little bit more accurate than they should be. I don't know, but it's a game, and it feels appropriate, and there are some scenarios that kind of demonstrate the importance of the technology, where you're going up with like just a ship that can't see as far, can't hit as far, and you're going up against ships that can hit you further. So I think it does a good job of having the technology progress through the period of time. Frankly, I probably don't want a game that gives me a Jutland like 2 or 3 hit percentage chance on any shell shot for a battleship, because even if it's historically accurate, it may not be super playable.
Yeah, the 2 games that this is like, for people who are aware of these are pretty, I think, pretty niche titles by themselves, so it's not going to be everyone who knows this, but it's been compared to Pacific Storm Allies, or like, I guess there's a Pacific Storm type game series, and one of them is called Pacific Storm Allies. And the other one is an old PlayStation 2 classic called Naval Ops. Naval Ops actually did have this build your ship, where you would actually take the engine and like move it in your hull, and then you'd put like the boilers, and like it actually had you doing all that underneath the hull, which you don't do any of that in Ultimate Admiral Dreadnoughts. You just put a funnel, and then you're assuming that all the engine stuff is done under the hood for you. And it can get a little weird right now because they have the balance system, which is pretty cool, like forward or aft, like how much of your displacement is, are you forward heavy or bow heavy? Are you, stern heavy? Unfortunately, it gets to the point where it's a little ridiculous. In order to counterbalance maybe a few turrets you have in the front, or it seems to be that a lot of them are bow heavy anyway. You end up putting your rear turret like, a few feet from the edge of your stern, right? Which there'd be no way you'd put a turret there in real life. Just logistically, you could not put the mechanisms you need to have a turret functioning right above the steering and all the rudders, the propellers. So
I'm going through the campaign here on the website here, and they have on the bottom here that you're basically the head, the chief admiral for your nation. You're kind of controlling the navy, and then there are alliances, and there's a whole bunch of shit that's going on. So the question I got for you guys, with this campaign, is it like Pacific Theater of Operation, PTO, like where, you got like the map and you're kind of just directing the ships? Like, how does that work? Like, I can't, am I imagining it right?
It's exactly like Rule of Waves. It's exactly like Rule of Waves. I'm pretty sure, I know that Rule of Waves was an inspiration of the developers because they've mentioned that to me. But they didn't say specifically the campaign map is supposed to be a clone of Rule of Waves. It more or less is. You're moving different ships between different sea zones. You have a foreign tonnage requirement. For those of you who are wondering, in the very first build, Alpha 1, version 60, which we've already moved past and you can't move back to, the developers left a back door to get into the campaign as it currently was built. And unfortunately, without anybody knowing it was intelligently on their part, they closed this loophole because somebody figured out the back door. You just held down Alt and you can click on it. You can still do that in the game right now. It just, the world won't create anymore. It fails. So you could actually see the campaign. I was able to see it. It's basically just like Rule the Waves.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting because, again, they closed down the access to the campaign. So what the final product of the campaign looks like, there's still some questions around it. But yeah, everything I've seen suggests it's going to be very similar to Rule the Waves. Hopefully with some key enhancements. Obviously I don't think, I think one of my main frustrations with the Rule of Waves is just some of the randomness for the actual battles, where it's like, I don't control what fleets are operating with what, and I just end up in a fight, and it's kind of like, this seems weird, or you just end up with a whole bunch of small cruiser action, and it's like, well, I don't quite understand that either. I should be able to kind of control where my squadrons are based, what those ships are made of, those kind of things. So we'll see. Obviously, it's still very early days. Just to stress, it is in alpha access. It's not even in beta yet. So they even have a disclaimer basically that says like literally anything we want to change before launch, we can still do that because we're at that stage of development.
Yeah, it's not even available on Steam from what I see. Like I was going through Steam, it says add to wish list or something. But if you go through the website, it says buy $49.99. So looks like you have to go through the website, right?
Yeah, you have to buy through them direct.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. For now.
When in the past, I think with Ultimate General Civil War, when it got to the beta phase, it was basically opened up in early access on Steam. But during the alpha phase, you have to buy it directly through them.
Well, the thing about this is like they're making this game. They're also making, I guess, the other one, which is the Asia Sail one, which I, got a chance to play, which was really good. And then I think they have like one or two other games. I think This Is My Land is another game there in development. So are they basically like a paradox where they got numerous studios developing these games? Because I doubt it's like 5 guys making 3 or 4 games at the same time.
They're vastly smaller than Paradox is 400 employees. They're vastly smaller than Paradox. I don't know how many employees they have. I don't know how many development teams they have either. I'm not super clear on that. I think one of the weird things that it's hard for me to understand sometimes with their structure is the original Ultimate General Gettysburg, which was their first game, and then also Ultimate General Civil War. They had the creator of the Darth mods, the very popular Total War games, was really kind of the main lead guy on both of those games. but they developed Naval Action as well, which was kind of, I believe, my understanding was a completely separate development team, not related at all to that individual. As I understand it, Ultimate Admiral Age of Sail, which is also in development, is they're reusing a bunch of assets from Naval Action, like the actual ship models are basically the same. They're just zoomed out to a different scale. Ultimate Admiral Dreadnoughts doesn't have that. I know that the Darth Mod creator is involved in Dreadnoughts. I don't know if he's involved in Age of Sail. And then to your point, they also have the This Land Is My Land, I think it was, which is kind of a Native American game that they're working on, which I'm almost certain is a completely different development team. But they've also said that Age of Sail and Dreadnoughts are different development teams as well. So I don't know if that just means like the coders are different, but like the designers are the same, because there seems to be a lot of similarity between Age of Sail and Dreadnought, but I don't really know.
Yeah, at least from what I see the gameplay, it looks like, Age of Sail just with modern ships, at least for the tactical element. From the screenshots that I'm looking at, I did not play Ultimate Admiral Dreadnoughts, but from what I'm seeing in terms of the video and the screenshots, it feels like it's Age of Sail just modified for modern warfare.
Well, there's no modern warfare in Age of Sail. It's Napoleonic combat.
No, I mean like in terms of the Dreadnoughts one. I guess semi-modern, right? Because it was about a century ago.
Yeah, I'll be honest, looking at the two, I do think the games play pretty differently, and to me the actual oceans and everything look a little bit different. I'm not sure how much is reused and how much isn't, but I don't know, they seem somewhat different, but there are also a lot of similarities, so it's really hard to tell at this point. I mean, they're a relatively small studio that has had a lot of success with both Ultimate General Gettysburg and then more so Ultimate General Civil War. Naval Action, I don't know financially if it was a success. It certainly from a PR perspective was probably a failure for the studio anyway. But they've got 3 games under their belt, and obviously they're working on 3 new ones. They certainly have had enough success to have 3 games in development simultaneously, but they're a private studio, so they don't really talk a lot about themselves as a studio. I think if you follow their Twitter account, you'll realize that they have a lot of confidence in themselves. They're very willing to call out practices that they disagree with from like a wargaming perspective on their social media.
It's an example of that. I don't actually know what you're talking about.
I don't know off the top of my head, but I know I've seen things where they've tweeted things and it's kind of like, oh wow, that's kind of assertive a little bit, yeah.
If you guys had to like break this down like right now, because it's $50, right? So if the listeners listening to this and they're like, you know what, I've been waiting for this game, but it's $50. Should I get this early alpha? Is it worth that $50 price tag for that early alpha?
I don't know. I mean, it's such a subjective thing. I don't want to cop out, but I think the easiest thing for people to do, I'm not going to try to just pitch myself here, but anybody, you can go to watch Historical Gamers content, my content, Benjamin Magnus, anybody. Just go look at the videos yourself. And what it is what we've already said. It's basically like the combat is a little bit more quote-unquote arcadey. I don't want to use that word too much because it's still pretty in-depth, but a little more arcadey than Ruled Waves, but you're getting 3D action. So if that's something that interests you and you have $50 to spend, then you can be playing it tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean, I think $50 is worth something different to every single person, right? But what I would say is that if you enjoy a game like Rule the Waves, this is a game that I don't think you'll be disappointed in what we've seen so far. But, it's hard to say at this stage. It's in alpha, right? So watch some videos like Tortuga said. Make up your own mind. And if it's something you wanna get into it. If it's something you want to wait until it's a little bit more of a finished product, by all means, wait until it's a more finished product.
Okay, it's probably going to be a 2020 release, right?
I would guess, but they haven't really. They're always, one thing that Game Labs does is they're always very kind of quiet about their stuff. Like, they announced Dreadnought a while ago, but it just kind of randomly one day without any real preamble, they said, oh, yep, it's available. You can get access to it if you pre-order it. So, I don't know how how much advance notice we'll get before it comes out. I mean, it is super well polished. So if they're further along in the campaign development than we're aware of, I could see it releasing this year. But I think given their previous track record and their history and, you know, the length of time that they really make sure things like, you know, Civil War was ready before they actually commercially launched it, we might see in a beta version before the year's up, but I don't think the final version would come until next year.
All right, well, there you go. So besides this game, I've seen this pop up numerous times on your channels, but you guys have been playing other games from what I've been noticing. So what other games have been populating your channel that have got you turning your head on?
What other games have I been playing? I've been playing a lot of Ultimate Admiral Dreadnoughts, as we're talking about. Another game that I've been playing a little bit of is Radio Commander. I'm not super far into that. I haven't had a ton of time to play it, but it's an interesting game that basically puts you in the shoes of essentially what I think is a company commander back on a fire base in Vietnam, and the only way that you can issue orders is via your radio. So you get radio reports from your platoons that are out in the field, and then you have to make decisions on this sort of strategy map, this 2D map, to give them orders. So you can order them to move across the map. You can call in artillery support. You can call in air support, medevacs, all these different things. But you have to do it all via the radio, and you have to base it all based on what they're telling you. And you can move little chits around the map so you can kind of get an idea of where your men are. But if you don't listen to them properly and you put the chit in the wrong place, or you call in artillery support on coordinates that you're not really paying super close attention, either one, the artillery will just miss and your troops may get overrun, or two, you may shell your own troops. And so it's a pretty interesting little game. I'm not far enough into it to really have a final opinion on it, but it's definitely a different way of doing things. For the historical accuracies out there, I don't think the game really models one specific position, right? Like in real life, company commanders were in the field with their men. Battalion commanders weren't calling an artillery fire support from a remote base, but it kind of mixes like almost like a battalion level positioning of where you were with a company level responsibility, and then also taking on the role of like a forward observer who would actually be the one calling in the artillery and air support. So it kind of has a conglomeration of different pieces of what you're doing, but it's a really interesting game concept that really is focused on making you make tough decisions with really limited information and a limited sense of what's actually going on.
Yeah, I mean, I got a chance to play the game. I was kind of very impressed by this game. Now, I just kind of bear in mind to anybody listening, I am not a 25 Charlie, so I did not go to school for that. But it's very, I would say it's very reminiscent from like the people I know that do that job. Like it sounds like this game feels, very immersive. It feels like you're that guy at the TOC, which is the Tactical Operations Center. So it feels like you're that guy in the TOC and you're actually moving shit around a map. And nowadays everything is digital, right? So you actually have, officers and the NCOs that are at the headquarters or the forward operating bases that, everything is digital. You have units on the map and then probably GPS on them where they are and stuff like that. But like 10, 20 years ago, they had them all on like a map. So you're like, all right, Alpha Platoon is here and Bravo Platoon is here. So, this is for the Vietnam War. So it kind of very immerses you into that role. And I did like that because like you were saying, if you fuck up, right? If you say, all right, Alpha Platoon's over here and we're drinking or whatever, and you move the piece in a different part of the map and you call in our artillery bombardment, on your guys, you're going to fuck them up. So, I do like that fact that you have to keep your P's and Q's together, so that was really good. I think it's on sale for like $15 right now. I do like that, when you're calling an artillery, like the ground's starting to shake a little bit, and howitzers, they, they rustle the ground a little bit. But Tortuga, did you get a chance to play it?
No, I haven't touched a Radio Commander yet. I don't want to say it like that. I just haven't looked at it. I've been too busy with other things, so.
Too busy with your naval strategy games. Tisk, tisk, tisk. You got to get back on the land.
Speaking of, by the way, I found a tweet exchange from Game Labs where they're basically tweeting at some people that say too many. The real unspoken part is too many indie developers do not make something users want. Just like I'm not going to spell out the Twitter user handles. Said there's too many toy makers. There are great toy users, or there are great toys users want to play, and there's the rest. Starting a band comparison is not always true. Some toys are art, toys are not. If your games are pure art, then you should never expect to make money. And it goes on. But I mean, just sort of like, I think they make some great games. I just think it's kind of interesting following their Twitter because they're very opinionated on things. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. In some sense, it's kind of refreshing. But it's just, some stuff that you don't always expect to see out of like a developer Twitter account.
Yeah.
Well, that's good. I mean, they're very passionate about the game, so that's a big thing, at least for me.
Yeah. I mean, I wasn't saying it in a bad way. I was saying they're very opinionated and confident in their own abilities, and I think, especially in the Ultimate General series, they've had a lot of success.
And they earned it. They earned their stripes because, honestly, the Civil War game that they came out with, Ultimate General Civil War, that game had the best user interface for moving entire corps and armies. I was very impressed. To this day, I'm very wow about that because I've never run into a game that, at least a Civil War game, that was able to manage an easy way to kind of move entire armies or corps without having me pause the game and spend 30 minutes moving that.
I think you can do it in Scourge of War, but it's different because the AI controls a lot of the movement if you're working at the core level.
So let's move on to the main meat of this. There was a big announcement by Paradox. They came out with a whole slew of new titles, from new games to new DLCs for their entire catalog. And I want to kind of get your first impressions. You don't have to pick out a particular game, but media impressions. What did you guys think about PDXCon 19?
Well, it's been very interesting to see the different people reacting to Paradox. When did Paradox become such a polarizing force in the gaming landscape? I don't know. Anyway, I think that it's great to see CK3 too. I think a lot of people were expecting it. It was. Didn't we have some predictions here about some stuff? But anyway,
yeah, we did.
I don't want to bring up those things.
Rustling our feathers.
Yeah, it's not intentional. It's just Vicky 3 would have been what I wanted to see. It's the game I want from Paradox. I feel like Paradox and I are slowly drifting as they become more mainstream. It's like the bands I listened to when I was a kid, and they became more popular, and then they didn't play the songs I really liked anymore, but because they were popular, it's proof that more people liked them. I feel like that's the way Paradox and I are going. They're becoming so successful, and they're being rocketed into, a place where their games may not satisfy me the same way they used to. So
I would have to say, it's hard for me to kind of, because Paradox has made some incredible games. I really like Imperator Rome. I know there's half and half, although I have taken a look at the recent reviews on Steam, and they're kind of leaning toward positive now in the black territory instead of the red. So I was kind of their latest patches and big content updates. I think Pompeii, and there was another one that was pretty recent, really made dramatic changes to the game. So overall, I mean, I have a good, I would say, faith in Paradox. However, there's a few things that kind of made me kind of hiccup. The first thing was a week ago, they announced a mobile game, Stellaris, with Galactic Command.
Oh my gosh, thank you for bringing that up. Thank you for bringing that up. Please tell the users about that. Some people probably haven't heard about it, but this is hilarious.
All right, for you guys that have not heard, the Paradox just came out with, or announced, a mobile game. It's not out yet. It's in beta right now, but it's basically Stellaris for the mobile platform. Now, before you guys kind of
Sounds good, right? Sounds good, right?
Before you guys jump in and say, holy shit, this is fucking awesome.
By the way, John's the only one saying that. Let's just be honest.
Well, no, I'm not saying that, to be honest. I was motivated. At first, I was like, holy shit, this is good. But then I looked into it, and it's made by Chinese developers. So it's not Paradox Studio that's making it. I'm assuming they're, overlooking and, reading the scripts and all that stuff. But It's a Chinese studio, which has been known for, it's a Chinese studio that made previous mobile games, which are pay to win kind of games. And I was going through the screenshots, and two things caught my eye. One, and this is a good thing. The tactical combat and the strategic combat is very reminiscent of Stellaris. So you have the sectors, and then on the tactical combat, you have like the systems, and looks basically like a game, just, not as graphically intensive. The second thing, which is the bad thing.
Hope that a game named Stellaris would look similar to Stellaris.
You'd be surprised. There's some games that, have the name of, a strategy game or something like that, and it looks like complete shit. And, the developer has to walk back from that.
You're 100% right.
But the second piece is...
Oh, please tell me you know. I thought the first thing was going to be this, but tell me. Tell me what you know.
So the second thing, well, this is, I'm probably not hitting the thing you want me to hit, but the second thing that I noticed in the screenshot was on the top right of one of the screenshots in the strategic view, it said shop, right? And I looked at that and I was like...
You don't even know? You don't know the worst part. The game has been pulled.
Oh, I do know, with the art shit, with the Halo.
Yes, the Halo.
I understand they took something from Halo.
It's been pulled because... Okay, first of all, the game itself was supposed to be a different game. This is a different game. I forget what the original title of it was. It was called like Space... I mean, this is not the exact title, but it was something like Space Empires.
Oh, shit.
And then when Paradox picked it up, they changed it to be Stellaris Mobile.
Oh, man.
And so there was already... The funny thing is, why do people even know that? They didn't... This was hilarious. They didn't even do like a find, search, and replace correctly on their, their title. So their old title still appears places. So basically, the Chinese development team is kind of ripping off a game that they were already trying to make and selling it as Stellaris. Then on top of that, the assets they ripped directly from Halo. So the moment Paradox... I mean, there was obviously copyright stuff being filed and stuff like that, so Paradox immediately pulled it. So I would say it was not a PR success for Paradox. It feels... I don't know what they're going to be able to... How any publisher can deal with this. How can you vet that a developer hasn't used any copyrighted assets? I know they have this exact same thing for code in the industrial world. Because, I work for a tech company, and they have this kind of software where you can actually buy this software which just checks to make sure you're not using copyrighted stuff. Because even open source stuff, a lot of it, the terms of usage, you would violate putting it into your, like, pay me software. So they don't... How a publisher is supposed to deal with that, I don't know. But Paradox basically picked up... You can pick winners and you can pick losers, and they picked a loser.
Paradox just drafted Ryan Lee.
So... I don't know. I'm kind of reserving my opinion until the game comes out and I do a full kind of thing. Because you never know. They might have been making one game and then Paradox said, look, we want to do this. You got a nice engine. We want to build on top of it and make Stellaris for mobile. And you never know. They might have reworked the code and, fucked up on the Halo thing. But, might have actually made a Stellaris port for the mobile. Gonna err on the side of like trying to be positive and trying to be like, look, I have faith in Paradox. Paradox is, before everybody jumps in, Paradox has not at least fucked me over yet, right? So I'm kind of like holding my hope there. They have some really incredible people that work for them, some real geniuses. So I'm gonna have some faith until it comes out. If it comes out and it's pay to win, then obviously I'm gonna be like let down, and it's gonna kind of make me think ill of the company in certain aspects, but
let's just hope their IP is legitimately there.
Well, at this point, I don't think that's going to be a problem. I'm pretty sure now they're going to have people. I don't even know if is Paradox going to continue it. I thought that they just pulled it entirely.
No, it's still in beta.
Or
didn't they say they were reviewing it?
Okay. Well, it makes sense. They already probably invested a lot of money into this, so...
Well, they probably want to see how rampant this is and then make a determination on, is this something we can salvage or not?
Yeah, that's a good call. I think you're right there.
I worry that this is just, so I'm hoping it's not this, where it's like we got to appease the stockholders. If we make a mobile game, we'll get a certain amount of revenue for it. I hope it's not that. I hope that they really want to bring games to the mobile platform because they want to have strategy game on the go for something for a guy like me, right? Because I'm always, running here, running there, and most of the time I have my phone on me. So I'm hoping that's the case.
John, I don't think you can separate one from the other, right? They're a business. Their objective is to make money. They're not going to just be like, philosophically, we think strategy games belong on mobile. And if they don't think they can make money, they're not going to do it. So, like, it's a game. It's got to make money for them. They're a publicly traded company. They have obligations to their shareholders. They're not going to make the game if they don't think they can make money. That doesn't mean they can't make a strategy game on mobile, but at the end of the day, the primary focus of making a game is making money. If you're
but I don't want it to be all about money. That's the thing. I don't want it to be like, hey, we're doing this because we want to make money. I want it to be like, hey, wouldn't it be cool to bring this game to the mobile platform?
I don't know. They've been talking for many years that they want to get on mobile. I think part of the reason they want to get on mobile is it's a large market that they're not currently getting any money from. And I don't think it's unreasonable to say, hey, if they think they can make money, they'll do it. If they don't think they can make money, there's no point in doing it from a business perspective.
Well, we have to wait and see. I'm assuming it's going to come out before Christmas because, that's basically, this is the season where everybody's buying new phones because everybody's coming out with new phones. So I'm assuming they're probably going to put it out before Christmas. That's kind of like the best time for everybody to put out a mobile game.
Maybe. I don't think we can make any assumptions about when it'll come out based off the whole intellectual property thing. I mean, they basically said, they have essentially said, we are reviewing how to proceed at this point. So who knows how long that will take? Who knows if this will ever even launch?
Yeah.
And, this might be a good thing that this came out and this shit has been happening because, like you said, they might be reviewing it and say, look, let's take all this garbage out and just make sure this is Stellaris for the phone, not anything else.
I have a question for you guys, though. How much do you think this is on Paradox for hiring? I don't want to project what a lot of people see as a negative side of China onto like every Chinese developer, but there is this idea that IP is just not very well protected in China.
It's not an idea, it's a
Paradox, fact. The Paradox did go there and they hired somebody. Like, I don't mind that. I really like Paradox from the publisher's standpoint. I remember when they did, what was it, like Magicka or something like that, and this kind of weird RPG-ish game. It definitely, like, I mean, I was happy they published
that. I
it.
thought you were going to say Gettysburg Armored Warfare.
I mean, this it's not a game that you would normally associate with Paradox, but I was kind of like, okay, this is not definitely not a Paradox development title, but it's kind of, I like that they published this. They got some developer, some dev company, some resources, and this company looks like they're having some fun. They had an interesting title, whatever. I like that, but at the same time, I basically like the publishing side of Paradox when it's used for good, but then I feel like now that they're just, if you go to China, I feel like you're broadcasting very clearly your interest is no longer in developing like good content or necessarily making like promoting the development studios that are small. You're really just saying, I want money.
Yes and no. I mean, I think that the Asian market is very different from a games perspective, but it's also very large. And so, this also could have been, I think, one of the things that we need to think about is like, is this maybe an inroad for them to have a little bit more success in outside of the traditional markets that they sell well in? I do think it's fair to say, if you're going to go with a developer out of China, you probably need to do a little bit more work than you would otherwise do to make sure that, there isn't anything like this going on where intellectual property isn't being respected. So, I mean, I think that the onus of that does fall a bit on Paradox to say, like, all right, if you are knowingly going somewhere that is known for not respecting intellectual property to the standards of which you are held because you are a European company, you probably need to invest some extra time and effort. And maybe they did, right? Like, maybe we don't know. Maybe this just slipped through the cracks.
Yeah, that's true. But, I mean, somebody could be getting canned for, launching
Certainly.
this.
I mean, someone might be. But my point is more just that I mean, we look at it in sort of a Western-centric view of like, oh, you're going to use a developer in Asia, and obviously that's less expensive than using a developer in the U.S., and maybe that means you're just trying to cut corners and go with something that will allow you to make more money. The alternative is this is, hey, they're trying to make inroads in the Chinese market, and by working with a developer that's had success in the Chinese market before, perhaps that is just their strategy to be more successful outside of Europe and the U.S.
Mobile games aside, they announced a whole slew of actual full games for the desktop platform. Let's start with surviving.
I'm glad that you admit that mobile games are not games.
Like, I mean, let's be honest. There are desktop games. I mean, you got Civilization 6 on the mobile platform, but let's avoid that entire. Yeah, I don't want to go down that path. I want to kind of talk about the good shit that Paradox has announced this weekend with a whole.
Yeah, that's good. Let's do that.
So I want to talk about the first one, which is Surviving the Aftermath. Which,
interesting.
Yes,
interesting.
I looked at it, and as soon as like they were playing it, it automatically in my head is snapped, and the way I kind of see the game is City Skylines meets Walking Dead. That's the way I feel like this game is. What do you guys think?
Yeah, it looks like, well, I mean, I think the top comments about it are, it looks like Banished meets the zombie, or meets the apocalypse, or apocalyptic Banished.
Ooh,
Banished was, how do you even describe Banished? It's a resource gathering game, kind of like a city builder. Anyway, that's, I guess a lot of people are describing it that way, and it has a lot of these RPG type events where, or, I don't know, I only watched Quill 18's stream or video on it, which is 40 minutes, so I don't have much to say. I don't have a huge knowledge about the game yet.
The game is out right now. You could actually pick it up on early access. And if you're going to Steam right now, because I just said that, and you're going to check it out, it's not going to be there. It's on the Epic Game Store.
Oh, I didn't. That's right. Okay, now I remember that. Speaking of Paradox selling out.
Yeah, it's $19.99 on the Epic Game Store.
So what do you guys think about this? Because this is a first for Paradox.
I actually don't mind it. I really don't mind it. I don't have much to say, so Matt, you can go ahead and launch off, but I really don't mind it that much.
Honestly, I don't have a ton to say about it. I see it's on the Epic Game Store. It's $19.99. I think it's interesting. I remember I was playing toward it was either the end of last year or earlier this year, a game called Atomic Society, which was basically a city builder, but you start off with essentially just a mob of people that survive a nuclear war, and your objective is to like rebuild humanity as best you can in sort of this post-apocalyptic world. I think we've seen a fair bit of success from post-apocalyptic or apocalyptic city builders in the last couple of years. I think if you think to oh my goodness.
They are billions.
They are billions. Games. You know, a very kind of a similar concept to City Builder, where your goal is to hold off the hordes of undead zombies, and eventually you're presumably going to get overrun. But you know, there's that game. There's another one that is about like a post Ice Age game, and oh my god, I'm forgetting the frickin' name of this game as well. What was that called? You build like a city that has to withstand like
It was like 60 days or something like that. What was it? Frozen? Oh god, I know what you're talking about.
It's like the temperature goes down.
Frostpunk.
That's what it was. Similar scenario where it's like, you know, this collapsing world around you, and you've got like one power plant generator sort of in the middle of your city that kind of has to hold you over and see how long you can survive. So I think this is a trend right now in city builders. Is, you know, you've got the city skyline, you've got back in the day, you've got the Sim cities where it's like, all right, the world is fine, and let's just build a city. You've got the you know, to a certain extent, the strongholds and the other cities like that. But I think you know, the surviving the aftermath is very much following that trend. I don't think it's something super new, but I think they're doing a couple of different things that are unique amongst it, right? It's post-apocalyptic, but then it's also surviving, you know, this new world. And I think, it'll be. I haven't played it yet. It'll be interesting to see what it plays like. I have no issue with it being an Epic Game Store exclusive. They can, or at least right now, they can do that. I don't really care about that. But it's interesting, and I guess we'll see how it looks. I haven't played it yet, so I don't really have many other thoughts other than that.
Well, so we have the Surviving the Aftermath. The other thing, which kind of not a lot of people have reported on, it hasn't even been on really many Paradox pages, but they came out with free content or they will be coming out with free content for Imperator Rome called the Punic Wars, where they're going to come out with new missions for either Carthage and Rome, and new music as well as new unit models. So I don't know if you guys have any comment on that, but I'm glad to see that they're still adding free stuff to Imperator Rome. They could have already started making a DLC, and I pretty much had one ready by now, because I think the game came out in May, June, so it's already October. So good time to come out with the first DLC, but no, they decided, look, all this shit, we're going to come out for free. And I'm assuming some of that has to deal with because of the...
I mean, let's be honest, they're still putting out fires.
Yeah, I think until... To Tortuga's point, if we're honest, the public in large is not going to pay for new Imperator content at this point in time until they figure out a way to win back enough positive public sentiment with that game. And with the way the launch went, I think they're wisely being very careful about charging extra money for a game that many people viewed as incomplete or not significant enough for what it was. And
I think it's more than that too. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I think it's more than that too, because remember the launch for Imperator, I don't think Imperator was as bad of a game as people said. I think part of that was a reactionary force of people just really tired of Paradox DLC. So for them launching, for a failed game, then launching paid DLC, it would probably be like, I don't know. I think you'd be lending your opponents more argument. Not that they're never going to make DLC cost money again, but I think especially with Imperator Rome,
and because they are doing a lot of.
They don't want to validate their critics.
Yeah, but I mean, on the flip side, so of the other announcements that they made, because we probably don't have a time to run through everything, but Age of Wonders Planetfall is going to have an expansion. Stellaris is having an expansion. Stellaris Federations. Hearts of Iron 4 gets a Resistance expansion. We might want to talk a little bit more about that one, but basically, it's we can talk about more of that later. And then they're also doing a DLC for Prison Architect, which I have never really played Prison Architect. I think you have, Tortuga, but I have not.
Oh yeah, I love it.
So
it's great.
there is a DLC for Prison Architect called Psych War, which should be interesting. Most of the announcements they had in their convention are DLC. There's one big one that we're not talking about quite yet, but other than that, the vast majority of the games that they announced are DLC.
The biggest one.
So, and I to be fair, I wouldn't expect a company like Paradox to come out and say we're releasing EU5, Vicky 3, and Hearts of Iron 4, or 5 all in 1 year. That'd just be unreasonable. But at the end of the day, they're not. I don't think they're moving at warp speed away from their DLC model, because I think their business is kind of predicated on that. But I do think, at least with regards to Imperator, they're being very planful in how they approach that.
And believe it or not, the last, I would say, couple months, or at least last month, you've been seeing mostly positive reviews on this game. And people have been saying, love the 1.2 update, keep up the good work. There's lots of reviews.
What are you talking about?
Which one?
Imperator.
Oh, you're still on. Oh, I thought we already talked about this.
No, but I'm just concluding that the reviews actually have been going up on this game, because right now if you go to Steam,
I think it's basically everybody who wanted to review bomb the game got that out of their system, and yeah, it'll probably neutralize. It can't possibly go down further, so of course it's got to go up.
All right, so I want to go to a piece of meat that I want to sink my teeth in, which is La Resistance, which is part of the Hearts of Iron DLC that they just announced. And I can't believe we did not fucking see this, because we just had the Dan Lind on the show 2 episodes ago or so, right? Where he mentioned that he was looking that they should do something like the community has been talking about doing like an espionage kind of sabotage kind of thing. I remember him mentioning that during the interview, and it's like, yeah, and that's something that we're looking into. But when he was saying that, they were hawk way right into the middle of that game doing that. So it's very interesting how he was they were in the middle of developing that, and we didn't even see that little nugget right there that we could have projected out of. So I wanted to kind of ask you guys this DLC. What do you guys think?
Well, I don't know enough about it. We talked to him and we kind of thought that something like this was coming, right? So,
I mean, in this DLC, they're coming out with national focuses for. I mean, there's a lot of stuff in this DLC. There's national focuses for France and Vichy region, for the Republican National Spain. So it gives you a lot of kind of branches that the war can follow. The key things that I really like about this is you can, as here it says, use your agents to assist allied resistant movements, give them what they need to damage the enemy. So I'm assuming tactical combat, you're moving your units. The resistance in France is going to help you out, maybe give you kind of a heads up like, hey, by the way, there's 5 German panzer divisions around Paris, giving you a heads up kind of thing. And then on the kind of opposite end of the spectrum, if you're kind of the occupiers, you can use scout planes to use the information on nearby areas while armored cars help in detecting and suppressing resistance activity. So, and then also...
By the way, do you know what is going to be part of the paid DLC? What's going to be part of the free update?
I think that's all paid. I don't think they... As far as I was reading, it looked like that was all going to be part of the paid one.
Oh. They usually do both. I think they do both typically. They have some parts of the DLC will be available to everyone. This is what they've been doing for like EU4 and like everything for a long time. They have something for everyone and then usually something for just, the people who are paying.
I mean, on their main page, it just says part of the introduction, Strike from the Shadows, and it just has all these things. It doesn't say anything that says free or part of... I'm assuming there's going to be something that they're going to add.
They'll divide it up later, so we don't know yet, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, but it's really good. You could decrypt enemy communication and get short-term battlefield advantages. So I think this is a nice addition. I was talking to actually a Heart to Iron player while I was at work, and I mentioned this. He didn't know anything about the Paradox announcement. I mentioned it. I was like, holy shit, that's pretty awesome. So I could see this, and this is basically just flushing out more of Heart to Iron 4. So by the time, we're on the 4th or 5th DLC for this game, and I feel like original Heart to Iron 4 came out, and Matt, where I was with the original release. I was not at all satisfied with it. But from then to now, this is almost like a completely different game. There's so much stuff in this game that it obviously at this point right now, it's a completely different game than the launch. There's so much stuff.
Only $250 later.
The true. Gotta say it. Well, I think a lot of this stuff is on sale this weekend, right?
Yeah, they had a big sale for the for Paradox Con. I didn't really have a lot of time to dig into the Paradox announcements as a whole, to be honest. I was out of town all week for a friend's wedding, like 25 years. So I'm not as super well versed in all the individual features. Based off what you're telling me and what I've kind of glanced at, I mean, I'll be honest, I liked Hearts of Iron 4 when it first came out for what it was. There have been a couple of interesting DLCs, like the China DLC was relatively interesting. I was a bit underwhelmed by the Man the Guns DLC. This looks fine. Looks like there's some interesting additional features. Can't say it's anything that I'm super excited to spend money for,
Wait, wasn't the Man the Guns one the naval one?
Didn't, I don't know, it didn't do it for me.
Yeah, bounced off. Okay, that to me was the best DLC they've released for a while.
I
thought that, I think at least out of the Hearts of Iron 4 ones, it was by far my favorite.
I think the China one was the most interesting just because it added a lot of complex layers to playing China, which I think more accurately models the historical reality of World War II China. And it got them banned in China, so that was fun.
Oh, shit.
Wait, what?
I mean, it might have been banned in China before, but I think it got them banned. I read something about it was basically like because it depicted a divided China. and there's like some rules in China about like
which never happened.
Well, you have to like their censors or whatever basically say you can't portray China in a divided light because it could cause civil disturbances or whatever. I don't.
The communist government. I mean, I'm surprised Paradox doesn't know that the communist government has been in place for 2,000 years.
Yeah, I mean that. I don't think they required to be China because, like, according to a few things I've read, they've started to ease up on some of the portrayals of the nationalists in China during World War II, as long as it's portraying the nationals and the communists sort of in a joint fight against the Japanese, so like United Front. But at least in the case of Hearts of Iron, the portrayal of China as multiple states was not something that was super okay. But in any event,
I'm gonna stay away from the politics stuff because there's so much shit going on about China. But like you said, anyway,
Jean may work for Blizzard. I'm not sure. But
you guys want to touch on Stellaris?
Pivot away, pivot.
I got my Blizzard ID in my bag right here.
I honestly did not see any of the features. Stellaris is the one that I saw, but I didn't actually look into it all.
I do like what they're doing with Stellaris, with federations, because right now you can actually make a federation in Stellaris. But from what I understand, what I took away from that was that it's basically they're revamping it. It's basically going to be a United Nations in space. So a lot of the stuff in terms of the United Nations, they're going to actually have a Security Council part of the Federation, which your nation can actually petition to be a part of, and you could do vetoes. And they actually have a couple cool things I wrote down here. So members can sanction those who defy the community, enact a single galactic focus, which is kind of cool. Each emperor has a story that shapes its path. So it's supposed to give you more backstory to your civilization, which I thought was neat. And then the last thing, which I thought was pretty awesome, it says construct glorious new projects for your empire, like a juggernaut, a massive mobile starbase that provides a movable repair base even in enemy territory, or a mega shipyard, a new mega infrastructure that can churn out fleets with incredible speed. So, I mean, for Stellaris players, I dabble in every so often. This is a nice addition. I do like the Federation part because I felt like that needed to be a little bit more fleshed out, because right now if you're a Federation, you can kind of be part of it and you take turns on who commands the main fleet, and I feel like they could have done more, and I feel like they are doing that now with this new DLC that's coming.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have anything.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard that it's going to improve a lot of the diplomatic or political, I mean, the inter-empire, like, doesn't it improve the way you do diplomacy with people as well?
Kill all aliens.
It's a little bit weird to me. Like, Stellaris, I really liked it. I've liked it, like, every time I've played it, it's been, like, okay, but this is weird. I never feel...
Just wait for the mobile game. You're going to love it.
Yeah, exactly. I love playing Halo in my Stellaris. You get Halo in your Stellaris without even having to mod it.
That's a title of this podcast, by the way.
9 out of 10 of doctors recommend Halo in your Stellaris for a balanced breakfast.
That's right. Like, I feel weird that I think Stellaris is a good game, maybe even like a very good game, but it's just weird that I haven't really been compelled to play it. Like, when I first started playing Distant Worlds Universe, when I played Aurora 4X, two other, huge games within the 4X arena, I just did not want to stop playing them for a long, long time. And I feel like Stellaris, I keep pushing myself. Have you guys ever played the Endless games? Endless Legends, Endless Space? Maybe not. But I feel like it's exactly the same as those. Those are, by the way, beautiful games. I can't remember the development studio, but they do a fantastic job making a great user interface. It's like one of the best user interfaces that you'll experience, especially because 4X games and like the Civ type games, they don't have a great... well, I mean, some of them have decent ones, but if you get into the Space 4X arena, a little bit less polished, or most of the titles are not as well polished. Anyway, I never got that in Stellaris. I never was like sucked in to play it forever and ever. I wanted to, it wasn't one of those things I was really, really interested in playing. I felt like I was... Anyway, so hopefully this changes things, but I don't know. Have you guys played a lot of Stellaris?
A fair bit, yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
And I will agree with you to a point. So there have only been, and maybe this is the growing cynic in me, there have only been a handful of games probably in the last 5 or so years that have really grabbed me where it's been like, I can't put this down. And of those games, I would probably put like Rule the Waves 1, sadly not so much Rule the Waves 2. Ultimate Admiral Dreadnought, I can tell already, is going to be that. And then Ultimate General Civil War was another one of those. I wouldn't say Stellaris is. I would say that Stellaris, however, is probably my favorite game to get a group of people together on Tortuga's Discord and play online with. I think it is a great game for playing with a group of other people and just kind of chatting and kind of having just a casual, fun little game while you're talking with friends or just having a good time. But it's not the kind of game that I feel like I want.
You don't feel that's the same way with Hearts of Iron 4? You don't find the same thing with Hearts of Iron 4?
Stellaris is more. Hearts of Iron is too. The timeline is too short. It's too intense a period of what's all happening. Stellaris feels like a more casual, and that I don't have to think as much or in as much detail as Hearts of Iron, where you really are trying to like min-max your economy. There's an element of that in Stellaris, but I never feel rushed in the way that I do in the early game of Hearts of Iron. So I think, fair. In my opinion, Stellaris is my favorite game to get a group of people together and play online with. But it's not a game that I ever really feel super compelled to play like single player. I don't really do that at all.
I think there's a lot of mystery in Stellaris. You know, the one cool thing I like about it is, you know, you're this galactic, I guess, mini empire, and you kind of grow out, and you realize that it's not like
Blood Court.
That's right. That was a pretty fun game.
But honestly, with this, I feel like, you know, you spread out, right, and you occupy other worlds, and you make alliances and all this good stuff, and you run into like these. I would have to say I forgot what they're called, but basically these fallen empires that you have these worlds where they have like this massive military, and you don't want to fuck with them. It's like, all right, look. We can grow, but these are the conditions. You don't want to fuck with them. You don't want to fuck with them. You don't want to fuck with them. And you have to make alliances. So I feel like there's a lot of depth and a lot of stuff in Stellaris that gets me intrigued. I would love for them to make a Stellaris Star Trek game. You know, it would be really incredible. I was hoping that they would announce some kind of IP partnership during, you know, Paradox Con. But I don't feel like Stellaris is one of the, not Stellaris, I don't feel like Paradox is that kind of company that does what Slytherin does, which is like the Battlestar Galactica partnership kind of thing. So, but overall, I do like Stellaris. I hope the mobile thing works out. But before we go too further into these other DLCs, let's get into the meat of it. All right, Crusader Kings III.
Yeah.
Yep.
How did we go the whole episode, by the way, without talking about this?
Very
carefully. We want to lead the drama, you know, want to anticipate, you know, want the listeners to foam at the mouth.
Oh, crap, there's a snake. Right. It's going to bite the baby.
So Paradox has finally announced the sequel to the highly popular Crusader Kings II. And a lot of people have been, like, enthusiastic, crazy about this new, because obviously there are a lot of Crusader Kings fans out there. A couple of things that I take away from this. So going through their page, it's kind of not cryptic, but it doesn't like flesh out all the features. So these are the things that I popped out for me. You could choose a lifestyle that suits your personality and ambition. From some of the videos that I saw, you could basically, you know, be a king. And you could be basically, you know, a person that, you know, a king that kind of chases after women, or, you know, you could be a greedy motherfucker, or you can, you know, you could be whatever kind of king you want, and the game will tailor itself to your ambition. And based upon that, you know, your kingdom will unfold. There's dynasties will change and adapt to changes in family and politics, swimming in a rich world of religious faith and royal pageantry. War is backed by cunning diplomacy, and diplomacy unites bloodlines. So, I don't know. What do you guys take from this? Because from the stuff that I read, stuff that I saw, it's basically Crusader Kings, just, I don't know, refined. Better graphics, better everything. What do you guys
think? My impression with the way that they're marketing this, and I think it's based off the success and what they feel they've learned from Crusader Kings II, is that they're going to lean a lot more heavily into the family dynamics. I didn't get a sense, like when I first played Crusader Kings II when it first came out, like family was important and dynasty was important, but it wasn't the overarching driving key only thing that mattered in the game, right? Like it was still very much a grand strategy game about expanding your influence, and the family was a portion of that. I feel like with the way that they're marketing this, they're really going to go all in on the features that allow you to focus on your dynasty, and that is the primary driver of the game. And I think that's probably a smart thing, because I think that's what people find most compelling about CK2, is that storytelling arc. I'm not sure that'll appeal as much to some of the hardcore Paradox fans, where I think they're more about painting the map your color, and the dynasty is a portion of it, but it's not like the end-all be-all. I think the more traditional 4X grand strategy games fans may not find as much appeal in that, but I think the role-playing elements definitely will. And I think that'll be interesting to see how that all gets fleshed out when CK comes out. But at least from what little we've seen so far, to me it is very much a game about role-play. And that may give it a little bit of a unique flavor compared to CK2 in a slightly more emphasized way than CK2 has, in my opinion.
Yeah, we also should mention that as part of all of this, they made CK2 free to play.
Oh, yeah.
Which had an interesting side effect. I'm not sure Paradox was considering as a possibility that now anybody can review CK2. So they've gone and they've destroyed CK2's Steam rating. It's just been obliterated.
I mean, they probably sold all the games they're going to sell for, or most of the games they're going to sell for CK2, so maybe they're not as concerned.
I mean, CK2 has been around for so long and has such a huge, like, overall you can't affect the rating that much, but if you look at the recent, I don't even know, what was it, just mostly negative?
So yesterday, which is the 20th, right, of October, 160 negative reviews versus 130 positive. Wow.
Yeah, it's mixed. So it's not even that bad.
Its recent reviews are mixed, for 61%, but you compare that with its overall reviews of 41,348, which is very positive at 88%.
Yeah.
I like that they did free to play. That's going to invite a lot of other people to get into the Paradox bandwagon, because people were not going to invest money into a strategy game like, Paradox has these grand strategy games. They now can actually download it, try it out, see how it tastes, and then if they like it, they can start going through those expansion packs, and then by the time they're done, Crusader Kings III.
They'll be $154 poorer.
Yeah, right.
I mean, yeah, it's worth calling out. It is free to play. That is only the base game. The DLC is all still priced.
Yeah, but I think you can still play the multiplayer to get all the other stuff if you have a friend who has that stuff.
Sure. I think that's the way their multiplayer works. One thing I did see is I thought I saw something saying the Old Gods was free. Maybe that was through some other website. I'm not sure. But I thought I saw something. It doesn't look like it is on Steam.
So, I mean, going over the couple of things that I look like from the screenshots here is they kind of minimize the UI from what I see. Looking at the picture of England right here, compared to the Crusader Kings II.
Paradox streamlining UI? Never.
Well, it's a lot less obtrusive than the previous game, as well as even Imperator. I feel like they're just cutting out a lot of that UI, and just so you can focus more on this, beautiful map that they have here, because it looks absolutely gorgeous. I mean, they put out a tweet, I think like a couple of days ago, where they had like CK1, CK2, and then CK3, and they had the same map, and they said something like, how time changes, and it's just remarkable how the differences in the map.
Yeah.
But so I'm going through the screenshots. I kind of agree with you that they're focusing a lot more on what is great about Crusader Kings, which is family drama, right? The family and your dynasty and all that good stuff. So I'm very hopeful for this game. I really like Crusader Kings 2. I didn't get into it because I felt like it was so vast, and it takes so long to get used to it and so long to kind of find out what's going on and basically the learning curve. That's what kind of threw me off a little bit, and I didn't have the time invest into CK2. But looking at this now, if they could refine it and the way kind of Paradox is going with a lot of their games, they're kind of making it the learning curve a lot more easier to kind of pick up on. So looking forward to what this game is going to come out. So I'm kind of curious for both of you guys, how CK2, what do you guys think about it? Were you guys a big player of CK2? Do you have like a massive series on it? Like, how much time did you invest in it?
I don't think I ever did a series on CK2. What I liked about CK2, actually, I think, is just the vastness of the possibilities of that game, and I think modding helped a lot. I'm sure I'm not the only person who has played like a Game of Thrones mod for that. I mean, there's no real Game of Thrones game, but that's definitely pretty close. So that's a lot of fun to do. Yeah. I really enjoyed playing CK2 when I did. I feel like with the main CK2 and Europa Universalis, for Crusader Kings and Europa Universalis and Hearts of Iron, for the main games of Paradox, you have to, especially with the evolution with new DLC and stuff, you have to really stay up with the times. I have a couple of friends who own all the DLC, and if I'm behind a couple of DLC, if I haven't played for a while, I feel like I'm going into a completely new game. And that honestly, at some points, led to me not being as interested in playing the game, because I just felt like I'd already been left behind. So, I mean, that was my own take on it. We'll see what you guys... Well, what do you think?
Matt?
I mean, I'm bad at CK2. I'm just bad at it. But I do enjoy it, and I think it's awesome, and I think as much as I don't feel compelled to buy DLC in Hearts of Iron, because I don't feel like enough is ever really added, I think I'm the kind of person who values length, like a horizontal DLC pack as opposed to a vertical. And what I mean by that is, to me, a lot of the Hearts of Iron stuff is vertical, where it's like, well, this is the game, and we're just adding a little bit more complexity to it. Whereas I think where a lot of the CK2 expansions are like, yes, we're adding some complexity every time. They had some DLCs that like really fleshed out the Byzantine Empire and other things like that. But they also added a lot of length. The game originally started, and I think it covered like 1049 to like 1452 or something like that. And now it goes all the way forward to like 700 AD. So in theory, if Imperator ever does kind of replenish itself as a successful game and starts selling a lot more copies, they could build Rome out to reach to CK2 or to CK3. But I think I'm the kind of person who appreciates that like element of it. To me, it always felt like the CK expansions were more meaningful and added a lot of new depth and complexity, and it really felt like I was playing a new game all the time. And as you said, Tortuga, that was something that kind of caused you to fall out of love with it. Well, to me, that gave me more appreciation for the series, because to me that says, like, yes, this is the Paradox model done right, as opposed to where people feel like I'm being nickel and dimed for everything. To me, it's like, well, no, I can very clearly see, yes, it's a lot of money to stay up to date with this game, but I am getting value for my time. Like, it would be no different than paying for a World of Warcraft type subscription over a monthly period of time. Like, if you had a CK monthly subscription, I would pay for that, because I feel like there is value being added consistently. If you asked me for a Hearts of Iron monthly subscription, I would never pay for that, because I don't feel like what they're adding is worth all that much. So I'm excited to see.
Gosh, I hope they don't do a subscription per.
Well, I'm just saying that, like, if you were to compare it, like, I could. To me, I see the value in the DLC in CK. I don't see the value in the DLC in Hearts of Iron for the most part. And
interesting. I think that's just opinion. I think that it's.
But I do think there's an argument to be made that there has, and obviously the games are vastly, like, what, Hearts of Iron is 3 or 4 years old now, and CK's 8. So, they've had a lot more time to add stuff to it. But I think if you look at CK when it first came out and compare it to what it is today, and how much was added and how much complexity was added, and the fact that objectively they've added over 300 years of playable history, as well as vastly deeper mechanics for specific nations like Byzantium or the Islamic states or whatever. To me, I think you can very clearly see the money that was invested in making this game a behemoth of a deep and complex strategy game, with very few parallels out there. You could probably argue they've done something similar with EU4, although I never really played that all that much. And so I'm really excited. I'm really excited to see what happens with CK3. But to me, I do think they're going to take a little bit of a different bend. And my impression is it's going to be much more, at least initially, it's going to be much more dynasty and family focused than CK2 was when it first came out. And I'm excited to see what that means. I also think what that means is when CK3 comes out, I don't necessarily think that means CK2 is gone as a viable game or product or whatever, what have you. If they really go all in on the family mechanics, these could be two games that coexist side by side for a period of time, reasonably well. I guess the only thing I would hope that they would do at some point, and I can see sort of the PR reasons why maybe they wouldn't, but I really think they should do something like what Matrix and Slytherin do, where they like say, okay, our DLCs for this game are done. Here's it's higher price than the base game, which is obviously now free, but create some kind of bundle where you just include all the extra content for some sort of reasonable price. Maybe it's $100, I don't know, but where you get like all the DLC for CK2, and maybe and it's like the CK Gold Edition or something like that. That's something that I really appreciate that Matrix and Slytherin have done with games like Scourge of War, where they say like, all right, your DLC is done. Here is a more expensive than the base version, but less expensive than if you add up all the DLC, and you can get everything at one flat price. I really think they should do that with some of their games. Again, I understand where people are like, well, I spent all this money and now everybody gets it for way less. But like a game that's 8 years old, you're telling me you can't do that? Like, no one's going back and buying every one of your DLCs. It's on sale so often. Like, just do it. And make it something that there's one bundle of everything, and you're not going to hurt yourself. If anything, you might generate a little bit of excitement around that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's this upcoming game that with CK3 is going to be, it's definitely going to probably be their most, say, successful game.
I wouldn't say that.
I mean, I feel that because CK2 is what kind of put them really on the map. Right. And I feel with CK3, it's just going to take them to a whole nother level because there's such a dedicated community behind this game.
There is. I wonder how, and I'm really curious. I don't know. I didn't follow it super close. But every time I remember CK when it kind of, I don't think it was, I could be, okay, like obviously I don't have their sales figure. But to me, it felt like CK2 really took off after it had launched, not like right at launch, but like sometime after. And I do think it was really tied to a lot of the mods that were out there. The Game of Thrones mod was huge for them. And I do think they had a set of sort of unique circumstances that really allowed that game to take off. And I think that's probably why they're leaning into the personal mechanics of CK3, is they're saying like these RPG elements are really what allowed CK2 to become their most successful game ever to that point. And I do worry. There does seem to be quite a bit of pushback against Paradox as a business right now within their core demographic, their core customer base, which I don't think is super reflective of the people who bought CK2. It's an element of it, but I don't think the Paradox faithful are the ones who made CK2 as successful as it was by themselves. And I worry that when CK3 comes out, like, I don't see Paradox doing anything different right now. You know, with Hearts of Iron had some pushback. There was definitely some pushback from folks like yourself who were a little bit upset with the direction that Paradox took. Imperator had even more pushback, right? Just an absolute disaster of a launch. Do we think that, aside, at least from a public relations perspective, I thought the game was fine, but again, a lot of people didn't. Do we think that CK3 is going to be any different? What do we think is going to happen when they launch CK3?
I do feel like there will be people out there and say this game doesn't have as much as CK2 has, and which they're going to be correct on, but set your expectations.
Yeah, but people don't. And again, and there is some validity to some people's frustration with the DLC model. I think it works well for CK2. I don't think it works for every one of their games. But I do think CK2, given the long period of time that the game covers and the way that they approached the DLC, to me, it was totally fair. But I think, I just don't know. I think CK3 is going to be in for a little bit of a rude awakening there as well. I think if they really wanted to go for a game that would win them a lot of goodwill within their fan base, even if it was somewhat simplified compared to what it used to be, it would be Victoria 3.
I agree.
Which obviously they have decided not to do.
Oh, man.
Or a Cold War game.
Boy, I think that would be really good to them. I mean, if you think about it, every game they have, except for, every game that they've iterated upon, the previous one was at least playable. Even EU3 was playable. Hearts of Iron 3, well, okay, I don't think Matt agrees with me here, but I think Hearts of Iron 3 was playable. Victoria 2 is actually, almost impossible to play. A multiplayer, it crashes, and it's an old game. It's such a complex, detailed game. It needs that user update. I mean, I don't know. So, boy, they would really have me back in a heartbeat. If they, Matt, you often say that because they're publicly traded, just they're so big as a company, not because they're publicly traded. That probably has something to do with the reason why they're so big, but because they're so big, they can't afford to do small titles. But is that really true? Why can't they just branch off a small team? Or even have a new developer come in to do Vicky 3? The same way that they publish, just have someone else. If they're not going to do Vicky 3, it's the whole Half-Life 3 thing all over again. If you're not going to make the damn game, sell it to somebody.
The thing I worry about is the reason why they don't want to do it is because it's a big risk for them. CK3 is not as big a risk as Vicky 3 or a Cold War game, because they're unsure of what Vicky 3 can provide. I mean, Vicky 2 was successful. However, they know with CK3 they're going to get a large income on launch day. Vicky 3, I know a lot of people, including Paradox, are probably like, it might make money, it might not. They have that kind of 50-50. The Cold War game has never been done. They never tested it. It's like new waters for them. So I feel like that's why they haven't touched that yet.
They don't need to do a Cold War. I know it's very difficult, and it would fundamentally change some of the core elements of the game, but if they really wanted to dabble in the Cold War world, they could just create a DLC for Hearts of Iron.
No, they have to redo it, because Hearts of Iron and Cold War don't work together.
Except if you look at the way that they modified CK2 over its life, it is dramatically different than when it came out. I mean, they could definitely, a late Hearts of Iron DLC closer to the end, when they're going to start stopping making content for it, they could do it.
You need, I think you need completely new systems to interact with, Cold War, because there's so many other different. We had Troy coming on the show a couple episodes ago, and he made some really great insights on why a Hearts of Iron Cold War game would not work, because he says there's so many more factors that come in, industry, economy, spying, so many other different factors that I initially thought, like you were mentioning, but then he kind of dove into it, and I was like, yep, you're totally right.
I don't think they could do it to 1989, but I think they could do a Iron Curtain DLC where it covers into the early 60s. Regardless, though, I don't know, I guess to me, CK3 is a little bit of a safer bet, right? In theory, but I part of me wonders, and it's hard to say without seeing actual detailed sales figures, which yes, Paradox is publicly traded, but they don't tell me oh, this sold this many copies, right? Or whatever. They give you milestone info, but it's really hard to know what are they actually targeting? What are they forecasting or whatever? CK3 should be a big success, and I am excited to see what it holds. But what I worry about is when you have Hearts of Iron 4 come out, and there's a bit of a backlash, and you have Imperator come back out, and there's a massive backlash. at that point, I think as a business, and it's not my job to run Paradox, but just as a casual observer and sort of commenting on it, to me as a business, I think you have to be a little bit careful, right? Because Paradox is not the same Paradox they were 10 years ago. That's completely fair to say. And I don't think it's reasonable for people to assume like you're going to make just this obscenely obtuse interface. It's going to be like Hearts of Iron 2 again, where it's just like,
hey, Hearts of Iron 2 is pretty good reason.
Just saying from like from a user interface perspective, from if you're trying to appeal to the masses, you're not going to build a game like War in the Pacific, right? Like, fair to say War in the Pacific by Slytherin is never going to be something that like the masses are going to adopt to.
Yeah.
So, like, if you're Paradox, you probably are never going to go down that well again. Because it's just not, it's not something that is going to allow you to sell the amount of copies that you need to sell. But here's where I'm coming back.
Why can't they do that thing I was saying? Like, what do you think about them just basically selling the Vicky rights to somebody who will make it then? Or by, you know...
could do it to a Chinese dedeveloper. Maybe
at least
we
publishing
could get
the
Vicky
games,
and Halo in
kind
one.
of like the Slytherin games.
Vicky and Halo in one?
I feel like, okay, the thing is, why is this always a big deal? Why is it a big deal that people are like, where is Paradox going, blah, blah, blah? We're just passionate because we frickin' love them, and we just love the games they've made. And then it's like you're watching, I don't know what's the analogy, it's like watching a best friend who's like slowly becoming cool when you guys were like nerds and playing video games together, and now he's like slowly putting gel in his hair and going to prom, and like, why aren't you just, you know, being a nerd with me? And I feel like that's kind of what's happening here. I'm watching a best friend slowly get too popular, and at least I want this best friend to, if he's gonna, you know, try to push this analogy as far as it'll go, if he's gonna become too cool, at least let him pay for another friend to come and be my friend. Let him at least publish games.
I'll be your friend.
Paradox now. Yeah, at least publish titles that are my friend, which they have within their means. They're not going to, you know, maybe make as big of a profit margin, but I don't know if Johan's still there, right? How do the people who have been there for so long, they just feel like, how can they not love making the games like this? Why do you think Imperial Rome was even made? I think that it's just been something they looked at, Europa Universalis Rome, for so long and wanted to redo. I can imagine them being passionate about it. I don't want to see that passion go away.
I don't think they're not passionate about it. I just think that they design their games in a way that appeals to a larger audience today because they have in order to survive as a company of 400 people.
No, I don't think that's true. I just don't think that's true. I don't know the business, like... I don't know.
I think you can make an objective. I think you can objectively argue that Hearts of Iron 4 is a better game than Hearts of Iron. I think you can legitimately.
No.
Listen,
that's not.
You can make that argument, and I would make that argument just because it.
Objectively, you're saying objectively.
More does not.
Subjectively,
more does not
yes,
mean better.
Not objectively.
Having more detail and minutia does not make a game better.
Okay, but I'm not saying that you objectively can say Hearts of Iron 3 is better or the same. I just take offense. No, it's not even offense. It's just wrong. It's logically wrong to say that you think Hearts of Iron 4 is quote unquote objectively better than Hearts of Iron 3. That's wrong. Maybe I misheard you, but if you said that, that's wrong.
So you're saying it is Hearts of Iron 3 is objectively better than Hearts of Iron 4?
No, just because A implies B doesn't mean B implies A. Hearts of Iron 4 is better to some people. It's subjectively probably better than Hearts of Iron 3 to a lot of people. Objectively, absolutely not. I mean, I like Hearts of Iron 3 better, and you'd be saying that, you'd basically be telling me you're logically wrong. It's just a matter of taste. I like Hearts of Iron 3 for my reasons, and I understand why a lot of people don't like it, because it's too detailed, but it's not objectively a worse game.
So this kind of brings me back to this thing here. So Crusader Kings III launched, right? We had Imperator that kind of fixed EU for Rome, right? The question I got, why do we need a CK3? Why do we need a Hearts of Iron 5, which is indefinitely going to come, right? Why do we need that? The problem with this is because Crusader Kings 2 has like over a dozen DLCs, and the game right now is so vast and so much content in this. It's a beautiful game. It's incredible, and you could pay, $100 like you were mentioning, but you get so much shit, right? And I love that. When CK3 comes out, it's not even going to have half of the content that CK2 has with all the DLCs. Eventually, it probably will. Maybe 10 years down the road, it'll have all the features that CK2 has with all its DLC. The problem that I have is, why can't they just do Crusader Kings, right? Drop the 3, leave it Crusader Kings 2, and then just
Engines.
Well, I understand, but you can enhance the engine over time. You can like, for example, if I have a car, right? No,
but every engine meets its limit.
But hear me out. It's the same thing. So, like, if you have a car, right, you can take pieces of the engine out and replace them with new parts. All right, I want to take out this part from my engine and throw in a converter, or I want to put in new intake valves and new this and new that, and eventually, 5 years after you buy the car or start modifying the car, it's a completely different car, engine wise.
No, John, this is just a software issue. I mean, I don't know how well you know development. I know it a little bit at least. This is what happens. This is why XP has to be changed. You can't have the same, Windows 95 can't be. What happens with everything, and it happens in Paradox, I'm sure as well, is you have people come in, they write code. And then even as well as they comment it or anything else, at some point you pile more code on top of more code, and everything gets so obfuscated. Nobody has any effing idea what it is even anymore. And this is actually a problem with Windows.
Yeah.
They have, there's people who have left and they don't even know what they're doing. They don't touch that code. I've seen it in my company. It happens everywhere. But the thing is, game companies have the luxury of building new engines, and when they build new engines, it's basically like saying, okay, we're going from Windows ME, 2000 ME, whatever, to XP. We're rewriting a little bit. We're doing something. We're not just piling, higher and deeper. So it's just a limitation.
I think it's stupid to just kind of like, all right, and I understand the comment system where you have like, all right, this is what this method does, this is what this function does, this is what these variables do. I understand that, and I understand that, sometimes people don't comment properly and you don't know what this fucking method does or how.
It's not about commenting, it's really just, can you look at it? Have you ever written a program?
I've done some scripts.
Even the stuff you've done, try to find something you've done 3 years ago, even like 2 years ago. Go back and try to read what you've already done. You will not understand it. Even if you commented well, it'll take a while to understand. It's honestly...
Yeah, but this is why you have a staff. That's why you pay somebody for it. It's listen, your job, I'm paying you $50,000. Your ass is to sit down, read the code, tell me what this does, and then we're going to build on that.
No. It just doesn't work that way. Like, okay, so let's say that you based your original engine in a programming language. Let's say that this is a common thing that people had to transition from at some point. A lot of people wrote their original code in Fortran. At some point, you just can't use Fortran. You want to move to C for whatever reasons. Now, Fortran is still great, but you are now like, let's build this new infrastructure because Fortran is just outdated. It doesn't, no compilers. Okay, let's pretend that you didn't use Fortran because compilers for that are still updated. But anyway, let's just say that you had an engine that was based on some outdated language even. You literally cannot do anything with that in a new language. You need to switch to a new engine for a new language. I don't think that's the exact problem that they're dealing with here, but that's the kind of stuff. We're not a software engineering podcast, so I don't feel qualified to tackle this. I don't think any of us are qualified, but I know that this is just simply an issue. Engines reach limitations.
I work for a company that has a pretty complex billing and provisioning system. And we had purchased this like 20 years ago. We purchased this system. I don't even know who we bought it from. And, it was out of the box. It was what it said it was. And everybody understood what it was supposed to do, what it was able to do. And over the course of 10 years, we made so many changes and tweaks and alterations to support new capabilities, new features. Think of it as new DLC, right? All of these changes got made. And 10 years later, nobody knew what the hell this system did. No, there was not one single person in the company that could sit down and tell you, I understand all of what is going on. It was, architects would describe it to us as a Frankenstein monster of a system. And so at some point, when you wanted to build new capability, when you wanted to bring on new devices or new functionality, at some point they just made the decision, listen, this is too cumbersome. It is spending too much of our time to try and understand if we make changes to this system, how is that going to impact all the other systems? because it's just a mess of a system by that point. They just made the decision, listen, we have to upgrade. We have to completely tear it out and replace it with a brand new billing system and provisioning system. And it wasn't painful, and it wasn't something that anyone enjoyed. It wasn't something that, like, you know, it really removed a lot of the features and capabilities that we had already built into it. But at some point, you just have to make that decision because you're so far beyond the ability to support what you bought originally that you just can't keep building upon something. At some point, you're going to do something that's going to cause it to collapse in on itself.
No, I understand that, but I'm gonna finish off with this. I understand your point, but the problem is when you decide, all right, look, I built this fucking five-story building, right? I'm gonna tear it down because look, I don't know what's in the walls. I don't know how the plumbing goes. I don't know how the electrical works. Let's tear it down. Let's build a new building next door, right? And we'll build it from the ground up. Eventually, after you build the building, a couple of years down the road, you're going to have another guy who says, yeah, maybe we should build a new building because I don't know how the fucking electrical works. So what's going to, when you build CK3, right? And you say, all right, I'm going to make these methods. I know what this does. Eventually, 5 or 10 years down the road, some guy's going to say, this is a Frankenstein. I don't know what the fuck's going on here, right? Let's build a new one.
And then you have CK4.
And it's just we're going to go over and over. And then the problem is, even when you get CK3, all the features that DLCs have, you're going to have to slowly re-implement them in this new thing. So you're going to pay for the same DLC again for a Crusader Kings III, in essence.
Yes. That's what happens, but I don't know what to tell you, Jean. Like, honestly, this is just the way software goes. I think this is just a statement of fact. You can ask people from Apple; they'll tell you the same thing.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, like, I would love if Paradox decided, all right, look, we have this game. It's incredible. It's beautiful. I understand you were saying about all the Frankenstein. Let's refine the UI. Let's have some guys tackle the code. I think there is a way to do that, when. I don't think it's just like, look, let's throw this shit out. It's a dumpster fire. I think there's a way to solve it.
Okay, there's even stuff like this. They may have written, this has happened before, people have written their entire engine based on like 32-bit processors, and then they're like, okay, well, we needed to do 64-bit stuff now. I mean, even that is like a limitation of engines. Sometimes it's actually worse to try to fix everything because you always are missing something.
That's a good comment.
And it's just the way that people are, that this is just a programming thing, that when you program, you learn, and you are never programming correctly. You always are doing mistakes. You're doing it less optimally. Every time you program a project, you leave that project immediately looking back and saying, I could have done A, B, C, D better. And I will do A, B, C, D better in the next project. But for now, it's good enough. It works.
That's a great comment, Tortuga, because I think Crusader Kings 2 came out 8 years ago. Was it even a 64-bit program?
No, I think it's 32.
So if it's 32-bit, XP's gone. We've been 64-bit for how many years? There is no way in hell that they can recode this thing to be a 64-bit exclusive program. It doesn't do a good job of multi-threading. It is using a fraction of new systems and new technologies and new capabilities to do, that have come out in recent years in CK2. It's not an efficient program. And so if the argument is, oh, well, go back and fundamentally re-architect the whole damn thing and bring it up to modern standards, how many people do you think are going to be willing to pay for that? I mean, that's the other thing is, that's not free. That's thousands upon thousands of developer hours to go back and do what you're asking them to do. And unless someone is willing to spend money on a DLC that adds nothing except plumbing, it's just never going to happen.
I mean, I'm all for, like, if they add 64-bit and then they add a little bit more. I understand, like, if they're making CK3 and they're going to make it 64-bit, which they're obviously going to do. If they're going to add, well, if we add 64-bit to this, right, it's going to allow us to enable this new type of feature in the game, whether it be like we can add 100 more different nations because we have a lot more processing capability, things like that. I'm like, all right, let's move from 32 to 64-bit, but just to kind of say, all right, like, let's redo the game because we don't know where this code does, so let's just restart from scratch. I don't like that.
It's not like that. By the way, it's not like, let's not bog down on the details. As I said, we're not a software engineering podcast, but let me just say this. At least, I feel comfortable saying this authoritatively. This is just the way it is, and there's a good reason why it is that way. And I'm sorry that that's not a satisfying answer, because I'm not qualified to give the full details, but it is just the way it is.
I'll leave off with, once Skynet comes online, we don't have to worry about that.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I'll add to this is that, and I wish I could find the quote, because I think it was on like a 3 Moves Ahead, but I'm not sure. It was might have been Johan. It was someone from Paradox who basically came on and was talking about like some things that they'd like to see added in CK, and they were basically like, listen, the CK2 would not technically be able to do some of the things they want to be able to do. From a court size mechanic, from some of the other, some of the things, there are limitations built into the source code of CK2 that they have things they want to do, and they've been building a wish list for years about things that they would want to do in CK3, but they just can't do for CK2.
Okay. If that's the case, then I'm all about that.
There's no way that they're thinking, oh, CK3 is going to be the same exact thing and we're not doing anything new. I guarantee you there are a ton of things technically that they cannot do for CK2 that they want to do for CK3, and that's why we're getting CK3. And it's just the reality of, as Tortuga's pointed out, of software development. They're not just ending this because it's a Frankenstein monster and they just want to start over. That's not, and honestly, again, with all the marketing and everything they've shown with it so far, I think they're pretty clearly, they have a vision of how this could be different. And I do think they're going to lean more into the role-playing as a deliberate design choice than they did in CK2. And so I'm excited to see how that works. That's just my assumption. I could be wrong. But based on the way that they're marketing and trying to drum up excitement, I do think this is going to be a unique flavor of Crusader Kings, at least when it first comes out, compared to what you look at when you see CK2.
Yeah, I'm down for that, if that's the case, yeah. So since we covered everything, I want to kind of finally ask you guys, what are you guys drinking tonight?
I'm drinking a Oktoberfest beer by Spiteful, which is a small independent brewer in Chicago, and it's all right.
It's all right.
It's a good Oktoberfest beer. I don't know, it's just a small craft brewery.
It sounds like a regret.
No, it's good. I mean, I'm not a beer snob, so it's hard for me to, it's good for an Oktoberfest beer.
Tortuga?
That, and I'm drinking the White Claw.
I am drinking water. I'm going to go get myself
Spiked
some milk
with some
and cookies in
vodka?
a second, though.
And I am having my El Guapo IPA, so yeah, I decided to...
Just going to start calling you El Guapo.
Yeah, boy. Isn't El Guapo sounds for a handsome gentleman?
Hey, I'm here on the Single Malt Strategy Podcast with Tortuga, the Historical Gamer, and El Guapo.
All right, so I think that closes this out. I thought it was a great podcast, guys. We kind of tackled the paradox. We tackled a whole bunch of shit. I really appreciate you guys coming on. Look forward to these paradox releases. I think a few of the DLCs are coming out this fall and this winter. So there's going to be tons of more episodes coming where we can just dive in and kind of rant and rave about how we should break down the old building and put up a new building. Huh?
Yes.
Well, thanks for having me, guys. It's always a pleasure.
But is it really?
Bye-bye!